Evening, everybody. Welcome to the Dallas Principals First Dinner. My name is Brian Rice. I'm here from Bannockburn, Illinois. I've been volunteering for Principals First for about 2 years, and grateful to be doing so. And I'm going to start off with a Pledge of Allegiance, as we're supposed to do. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. And now, happy to introduce for our prayer tonight, Major General Howard Stendahl, 17th Chief of Chaplains, United States Air Force. Thank you, sir. Let us pray.
Gracious God, we gather in intercession first for our nation. Inspire us toward doing justice, loving kindness, and walking humbly with you. May we find strength in our historic hospitality and unity, taking our place among the nations of your world with deliberate decency and honor. We gather in intercession for all the nations of the world, for the planet we share as a place to live. Nurture among all persons a sense of stewardship and care, that our children and generations to come may know your intention of a good and safe place to live. We pray tonight for those in authority, whether in uniform, elected officials at every level, and those are first to respond to crises here at home and in every distant land. May their service be selfless and swift, always seeking to do what is just and right, and finally be present at our tables tonight. Let each one listen carefully and speak with integrity. Make of us a group devoted to the principle that integrity, character, and virtue matter. We honor you best when we honor every person created in the divine image with dignity, quality, and infinite worth. May our words and conduct be acceptable to you, our rock and our redeemer. Amen.
Well, welcome everyone to the Principals First Dinner here in Dallas, Texas. It's a delight to see the room full. First and foremost, a lot of folks here, familiar, some new, and we just want to welcome you on behalf of Principals First. My name is Heath Mayo. I'm the founder and president of the organization, and it is an entirely volunteer group, really. A lot of people don't know that, but we began Principals First 5 years ago now. You know, our premier event every year is the Principals First Summit, which I see many of you who have gone to that event throughout the years, maybe once or twice, some who haven't. But that's really how we got started. And the idea of that event was just more as a response to the Conservative Political Action Conference, CPAC. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that conference, but really it was a place where the conservative movement had come together to really talk about its ideas and what it meant to be a conservative. And, you know, that was 5 years ago when we started gathering, because we saw that CPAC had started to, we saw what was happening at CPAC. They were starting to get a little bit crazier, and they were talking less and less about the principles. And all of a sudden there were gold statues of politicians rolling around in the hallways instead of principles or ideas. And so we thought, you know, it's time to start gathering elsewhere and talking about the principles that really define what it means to be an American. I think that more than anything is what unites everyone in this room today. I think, and really in rooms all around, like this, all around the country, as we're starting to see as Principals First, completely grassroots group. This is crazy. The room is this full. It's going to continue to be this full. We've got dinners like this planned all around the country. And so if you're interested in being involved in what you see happening here tonight, we think that this is the way that positive change happens in this country. Because, it does start with we the people. And we have to take the case for these American principles to the people, because it does feel like the country is losing touch, I think, with a lot of the ideas and the principles that have really made America so great over the near 250-year history of this special country. I think everyone in this room still believes that America is an exceptional place, and that it's worth defending, and that we are in really a historic moment right now as a people and as a country, where we are newly questioning things that we thought had long been decided, perhaps we even took for granted. Things like, the rule of law and the Constitution matter. The idea that the content of someone's character and their merit ought to determine how far they excel or succeed, and not who they supported in the last election, or who they pledged their political loyalties to. That's just not the way that things have worked in America, and they shouldn't. Ideas like, the rule of law should be applied evenly to individuals, and there shouldn't be favor or persecution based on who someone supports or what party they claim. I think a lot of us in this room don't think there's not some deep state out there. I mean, the prosecutors, the people who enforce our laws every day, there's neighbors, men and women just like us, and if there's politicians or anybody else who's breaking the law, they deserve to suffer the consequences and pay the consequences if that's proven in a court of law. So I think there's a host of principles, right? Free markets, limited government, that Principles First stands for. But the one that we've convened here this evening to discuss, and we have just a star-studded panel to start us off, and then the keynote remarks from Colin Allred later on, is the principle that America has a unique and important role to play as a world leader. That we are blessed with many strengths, as the strongest country in the world, the largest economy, and that with that becomes responsibility, and principles of freedom. Free people are all around the world look to the United States still for guidance and for courage. We see this in Ukraine. We see this Israel, all around the world, different theaters, where the very principles that we're in this room to defend today are under attack elsewhere. And so we're going to unpack that tonight. We have just excellent folks on hand to help us unpack the strategic challenges that the United States faces. We'll talk about Ukraine. We'll talk about China, just all the different theaters and the challenges that we face. But I just want to commend everyone in this room for being here at a time when not so many people around the country have the courage to stand by their principles. It takes courage, it takes grit, and it's an honor to stand with each of you in this room today. And your courage is going to beget more courage. And good things start in rooms just like this one. So I want to encourage you to continue standing up for these principles that we share, continue to show up, spread the word, spread the importance of these principles to your neighbors, even in those situations where it may be uncomfortable. And this is how good things will happen. So I just, again, honored to be here this evening to see all of you. Before I hand it over to the first panel of the evening, I do want to pick on one of our longtime volunteers. It's his birthday this evening, but I don't know what the number is. I won't say the number. But Mr. Jeff Oppenheim is in the back there. He's a longtime volunteer. Okay, well, his friend said that spread the number. I also want to say thank you to my wife here. She's in the front row, Cecilia Chan. She's very supportive of the work that we do here at Principles First. I continue to do this on a volunteer basis, and as do many of the folks. And so, Cecilia, thank you for always being supportive of this work. I appreciate it. And then my mom and stepdad are in the back with our new baby daughter. So I'm just recognizing everyone by personal privilege here. She's back there. And the last thing I'll say is this evening, please meet the folks at your table. Meet everyone you can. Introduce yourself to Brittany or Brian or Jeff, any of the Principal's First volunteers who have been around. Talk to Melvin, who this is his podcast, Stories from Real Life. If you haven't heard it or listened to it, it's great. I highly recommend it. But this movement is really growing because of people like that. This is completely word of mouth. The reason that you're here today is because you heard about it from someone. You probably saw the summit on TV or something. The Proud Boys showed up to protest us. So we must be doing something right. Jesus, crazy. Thank you. But this is how it works. This is how it started from the very beginning. We're going to keep growing. We're going to keep at this. And I'm just, it's such an honor and a privilege to see you all here this evening. So without further ado, I will welcome Brittany Martinez to the stage, our executive director, who will moderate the first conversation. Thank you.
Hello, everybody, and thank you again for being here. It's always so great to get such a big group of people together who just believe in America and all the great things that she stands for. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce all of these wonderful panelists, and I apologize to them, but also to you in case I get something wrong, because they are just so amazing and have incredible titles that I might say wrong. Sorry. So first, I would like to introduce Ambassador James Wally Brewster, and he served as a U.S. ambassador to the Dominican Republic, where he strengthened diplomatic ties and played a pivotal role in promoting U.S. interests in the Caribbean. With a background in both diplomacy and public service, Brewster's experience spans a range of international challenges, from trade negotiations to humanitarian efforts. His expertise in foreign policy and global relations brings valuable insight into the future of U.S. diplomacy. Next, I'd like to introduce, round of applause. Next, I would like to introduce Fleet Master Chief Retired Raymond D. Kemp Sr., U.S. Navy. Raymond served as a Fleet Master Chief of the U.S. Navy, one of the senior enlisted advisors to the Chief of Naval Operations, where he advocated for all Navy personnel and helped shape service-wide policies. As a Fleet Master Chief of Europe and Africa, he directed over 56,000 service members and civilians, consulting with foreign government leaders to help professionalize their military efforts. Kemp revolutionized naval leadership by creating the foundational document, Laying the Keel, which was adopted across the entire U.S. Navy and immediately impacted the training and development of over 30,000 leaders at every level of command. Next, we have Chaplain Major General Retired Howard D. Stendahl, United States Air Force. Stendahl, a retired Major General in the U.S. Air Force, and was the Chief of Chaplains Headquarters in the U.S. Air Force at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. He was responsible for establishing an effective chaplain program to meet the religious needs of all members of the Air Force and their dependents. As Chief of Chaplains, he was a senior pastor for more than 680,000 active duty Guard, Reserve, and civilian forces serving in the U.S. and overseas, and led an Air Force chaplain corps of approximately 2,000 chaplains and chaplain assistants from the active duty and Air Force components. I told you it was a mouthful. Next, I have Rear Admiral Jake Korn from the United States Coast Guard, retired. Jake Korn, a retired Rear Admiral, held numerous high-ranking positions during his career, focusing on national security, maritime operations, and interagency collaboration. Korn's leadership spanned across multiple sectors, including counter-narcotics, homeland security, and environmental protection, shaping policies that enhance U.S. maritime security. And last but not least, 3-star retired Lieutenant General Will Troy, Army. Will Troy, a retired 3-star Lieutenant General in the Army, commanded at the highest levels, overseeing large-scale military operations and shaping defense policy. His leadership experience spans numerous military campaigns and strategic engagements, with a focus on national security and defense readiness. Lieutenant General Troy's deep understanding of military strategy and interagency collaboration of military strategy provides essential insights into the evolving landscape of U.S. military leadership and foreign policy. So without further ado, thank you to our wonderful panelists. Please feel free to take a seat, and we just want to say thank you to the National Security Leaders for America who helped connect us with this wonderful group of gentlemen here, and we look forward to this engaging conversation. So now I'm just pretend you don't see this 5 seconds and I walk to my seat. It's like magic. I was here the whole time. Okay, so thank you again so much, all of you, for being here. And again, to our, I'm going to keep saying it because it's always so cool to see excited folks who want to hear from great views such as yourselves. So, without further ado, we're just going to jump right into it. At this moment in time, American foreign policy and the world generally, there's lots of news happening, always, when it comes to U.S. national security. From the war in Ukraine to Gaza, and to our evolving posture towards China and Taiwan, even yesterday, you might see a little signal issue that the administration had, which is maybe not so little, or they say it's not a big deal, I don't know. I know it was kind of weird. So, while we try to unpack as much as we can, let me just start at a high level. I would like to get from each of you a quick check. Is America's position of influence in the world and our stature among nations strengthening or waning, and why?
So that is a fact. It's always too late. I mean, I think there's not anybody who's truly did not say that is the case. But I think the more important thing is that we lost humanity, and I think the perception of what the U.S. is has changed as we continue to offend every ally that we have. And that's what's scary about it, is that the reality of people worldwide now is the U.S. is not who we were. And that was, we were there when they needed us, we were there to defend democracy in the front, and we were there to make sure that the people that worked, like these gentlemen and others who worked their lives to make sure that we were safe, we had turned our backs on many of them, and also created a dynamic where even our embassies are scared to go and have conversations because they know it's not going to be a good conversation or it's going to make it any more to 10. So, yes, that's one, and I think that's the 5B part, is that we've lost the leadership of humanity.
I think it was Churchill who said the only thing worse than fighting with having allies is fighting without allies. And I think that's the dangerous ground that we're treading right now. I've been in, like many on the stage here, operations with allies, and that those alliances are built. And there's formal treaties and agreements, and there's all of that. But what underlines all of that is trust. They trust that we're going to try to do the right thing within our needs and within our political objectives, being respectful of theirs. But ultimately, we're trying to do what is right. We're a nation that respects human rights. We respect our treaty obligations. We have had great success in the post-World War II era in keeping the peace and leading the free nations of the world. Not without mistakes, let's be sure, that we know that, but we've done pretty darn well in some tough circumstances. Yeah. So I just wanted to say that worries me a great deal. These things are like a lot of things in life, they're easily broken and very, very hard to repair. So that's my thoughts.
America used to support democracy worldwide and reject authoritarian regimes, and now unfortunately it seems we're kind of doing the opposite. To suggest that Ukraine, a country that was invaded by Russia, could end the war easily and stop it, it's just astonishingly false. And we got more done. What these gentlemen just said about beginning with humanity, beginning with democracy, support for rule of law, support for human rights is what we're losing, and we'd have to get it back. People like you, I applaud you for being here, for being part of Principles First, because people like you are the ones that are gonna have to do it. We're gonna have to take it back.
I agree. The key word that I would repeat, Lieutenant General, is trust. All relationships are founded on trust. Whether it's intimate relationship with husband and wife, if it's a working relationship, it's professional, and relationships between nations are rooted in trust. Certainly in the military instrument of power, all leadership resides in trust. If those who are led at sea, the sea services, the land forces, in the air and space, if the leader ahead of them is a leader of integrity, the core value of the Air Force and the sea services, the core values of honor, courage, and commitment, the leadership core value and acronym of the Army, lives are at stake. When the commander directs an operation, it may involve the loss of life. Only when those soldiers, sailors, marine, marines, guardians, guardsmen, trust those over in authority will that military instrument of power be effective. So also in relationships between nations. Look not just to words and to policy, but to conduct. How does the leader and how does this nation conduct itself in relationship to those whom they lead and their friends, allies, coalition partners?
Rick, about on that, and I can say yes and amen. I'd say that as someone who did 11 combat deployments, Sarah enjoyed 6 residents and deployed for one reason or another under those 6 partners, I realized that the reputation of America was really, really strong under various different residents. The reputation, the trust, if I may, was really high when we showed up on the combat zone for a joint operation, 4 deployments of which were hand-to-hand combat with joint forces, to show up with joint forces from searchers from other nations. The confidence that they had when we showed up, they knew that our gear was appropriate. They knew that we were well trained, and they knew we were not in there to give in, but to take every inch that was available and be taken. They knew that we were dead or fired. Well, our confidence comes oftentimes from our oath. See, we swore to support and defend the Constitution, not a person, not a flag, the Constitution, against all enemies, foreign and domestic, bear true faith and allegiance to that appellation, to that oath. And when we show up with that mental confidence within ourselves, that comes to your point, Captain, the way we treat on another relationship here on, that echo is abroad. Folks want that. They want to have that. And now it's a bit different. Your question is, are we waning or strengthening? We are certainly in the wane. As a sailor, I'd say we're in the doldrums, that place of the ocean where there's no wind. And only those who are forward, who have decided that we're going to be successful in spite of the administration, are the ones who are ensuring our comfort and our safety for the future.
Thank you for all those perspectives, and I'm sure as we're sitting here, it's not something that, as Americans, right, we live in the best country in the world, we're the best military, the strongest, we're the leaders. That's not something that we want to hear, but it's something that we mean to hear, to recognize what's going on, right? And you touched on it a little bit during this panel, but one of the things happening right now that people sort of say what's going on is the situation in Ukraine. So I want to focus in on that strategic environment. Is the U.S. doing enough in that conflict? And are you worried about recent developments and how critical Ukraine's response is to the security situation in all of Europe?
So Ukraine, I think that
The microphone doesn't like you, Wally.
Ukraine is I believe the testament of what's happening right now. My husband and I were there, quit his job the day after the invasion of Ukraine, and just get women and children out of Ukraine, through across the border. And I watched people just going over Dollar Tree and saying it was right, they should. We saw Congress with Honorary and others say we got to improve America through their democracy, because it is online right now. There's democracy against our foes. And if we all stand with Ukraine and continue to stand with Ukraine, I think we're essentially telling Russia and China and others, not only Darwin, that's also, we're coming into hate what we want here, because we're not going to expect it. I think it is a whole thing for our national security. We're allowing women and children to die, and we're allowing countries to be destroyed. And the idea of the beautiful resorts is not only embarrassing, but it just shows that no longer do we have the respect. And the last thing I'll say is that, as a country, we've got to do it, because even though perception is the leadership, the reality is targeting Americans do not agree with our leadership do. So we have to communicate, and not sure how it looks, but we have to communicate in a very strong way with these countries to show that we still support them.
What puzzles me the most about what's going on with Ukraine is, where is the rationale for this abrupt 180-degree turn in our policy? Will someone please explain it to the American? If you're going to make a change like that, you owe it to your constituents and to the American people to explain why such a radical change is necessary and in our interest and in the interest of our NATO partners. I haven't heard that. I try to stay up on the news because there has been no explanation, and it's done. It seems very capricious. It seems impulsive, and it seems wrong. So, I just as an American citizen, I want to hear what we're doing and why, because it's very worrisome. I attended a very small dinner with some high-ranking Ukrainians, and the one thing I'll tell you about that is there is no quit in them. And they are not going to go quietly down this path that some people might want to lead them down. They are not going to do it. So I take heart in the memories of what I've heard from them. And I hope that saner head will prevail in this discussion. Thank you.
I feel like we're on the edge with Ukraine. I think, it is puzzling why the majority is President Trump who is reverse course. I think that's very puzzling. But rather frustrated was because Congress had largely given into the administration a lot of things that they're just kind of not a third part of government. They advocate responsibility for budget, for everything that's going on. I think in this situation, I'm hoping that there's enough people in Congress that is the right line where we cannot allow democracies, and there'll be enough people in Congress to stand up to the administration and provide or support the Ukraine. Because I think it's got to be done, as these gentlemen have said. We cannot turn our back on Ukraine. Then what else is next? What's next? It's similar to China. If it says, okay, go ahead and take Taiwan, where you get, there's all kinds of things. Iran, all kinds of bad state actors. If they see that we're lost to the faith and our resolve to support democracy or military.
I agree entirely. I would simply say to the leadership of this nation, tell the truth. It's so simple. I know darn well they move. And when? Tell the truth. Lead from integrity, and people will follow. I teach that to my children, and I agree entirely with your Admiral that it is kind of green line, that General, to other nations who may have attention to Taiwan Strait, who may have intentions elsewhere. I am not to say, let them do that, whatever they want. But would say, tell the truth, yarn.
the Ukrainian people be very personal because during my lifetimes on Advocacy, I hosted a Eurasian conference. We invited various countries on the Mediterranean and Europe, and even later from Africa, into visiting where my headquarters lived at conversations. In 2016 was my first year doing it. In 17, there were a few people missing from Ukraine. This is a couple of years after they had walked into Crimea, but the attacks had begun. They were still in Crimea, and back the first year when I was there, they were telling me how some of this had come from the front lines to this particular event. Well, it turned out later that the following year there were few missing. Turned out they were killed in combat, and those KIA, those who had been killed, were killed because there were some UDs that they didn't get fulfilled because of immunity that had been promised by the United States. I didn't find out until a few back that it was the 45th administration that was holding back the president-elect, but he would delay those funds going into Ukraine. Thus, my friends, those who had digging for the first time in their life at my house, when I invited them to labels, gave up the ultimate out of their lives. And so when I see the way that we're faltering, it hits me in the chest in more than one way. I mentioned before how our reputation as a strong nation precedes us. Well, it's also, as someone who lived in Europe and lived in Japan for 8 years, I guess between the two, I know what it feels like when other nations are looking at us for strength. And then when they don't see it, they lose a bit of their confidence as well, particularly our NATO partners, allies, and friends. And so we're at a crucial point. And Kemp, I agree, if we could lead with honesty and truth and integrity, though I don't know if those are associated with the 47th administration, if we can bring those up as leads from grassroots events like this, I'm sure that we can have an impact on forward.
Thank you for all that. Let's talk about grand strategy for a moment. Some believe that the United States faces a new constraint on its ability to lead on the world stage, and that we lack the capacity to both deter Russian aggression in Eastern Europe and devote resources to deterring China in the South China Sea. Is that the right way to think about America's leadership, and what should be America's chief strategic priorities over the coming years?
You know, there's a lot of parties that I think we have to be realists that this administration that we're in right now is not only taking any of that leadership. And I think we have to start thinking that way, and how do we adapt in a new world? And we've all got to think on that, because the reality is our embassies can no longer go in and talk about voting in the UN or the United States against Russia or against China. We can't go in and ask them to be our ally in certain areas because we're not there for them to be allies of. So I think from that perspective, we have to have organizations work closely with the UN and work with the EU and others who are galvanizing and becoming stronger in order to fight on behalf of what democracy looks like. Because the U.S., unfortunately, we're not there. And I think it's important that we continue to advocate that who we're seeing right now in the leadership is not who the U.S. is, but we've got to support those organizations that can go in there and actually lead it, at least for the next 3.5 years, when there's not a budget under continuity to pursue that.
I think that I could get a lot of agreement for both sides of the aisle on this one fundamental premise, which is the United States needs a very strong, professional, apolitical military force. And that is something that is, I think, should be considered non-negotiable. And we've got problems. We have got to have a professional force where it's a true meritocracy. You rise by your performance and your potential, where you stay away from the world of politics while you're in uniform. I've been around the Army for about 12 years now, so I feel very empowered to exercise my First Amendment rights. But I do think that military people have got to be careful. You know, you can't walk out of the Pentagon and they wanted 2 weeks later to appear on the news. That's not good. So I really believe, in answer to the question, if we're going to lead, We have got to have a military that is strong, professional, and completely apolitical. We do not want to go down this sort of path. Thank you.
I completely agree, and we're part of another organization called National Security Leaders for America, and that's one of our premises is that the military has to be apolitical. But as you'll notice, who was fired recently, a bunch of the highest-ranking military leaders in the United States were fired for obeying the laws of a previous administration, obeying lawful orders of a previous administration, and doing what they thought was right. They were very competent. They did nothing wrong. When a new organization comes in, it didn't like what the previous administration did, they fired them. That is completely wrong on so many levels. It removes that most experience that we have from the military is now gone. Don't have that leadership. It's grown up for so many years in that military. Junior officers under them look at this and say, my goodness, you don't get promoted on competence, you get promoted on who you support, right? What your political views are, which is completely the wrong way to go. So yes, like the general says, we have to have an apolitical military. We all need to support that, and for various reasons.
Uniform Code of Military Justice requires that no uniformed officer ever, or senior SEO, or any person in uniform, speak contemptuously or with disrespect to the Commander-in-Chief. I understand and I respect that. So also do I expect respect in return. The dismissal, thanks. The dismissal of all the Judge Advocates General of the United States and the Army, Navy, and Air Force constituted the evacuation of the legal conscience of the military mission and power in this nation. I fundamentally disagree with that action, based upon my belief that it is a global community, especially in the digital age. We live not in a fortress America protected by this beautiful ocean, but we have to live in community with other nations with the respect of principles first and not adherence to an individual. As Master Chief said, we swear an oath to the Constitution.
When it comes to leading at the global level, it is crucial, I believe, that we are committed to intellectual agility. That means that we are inviting to innovative ideas. We are geeking up with the technology. We are exploring those things that would be useful for the military, but also for those who are abroad, particularly our ambassadors who are at the front line. For us to continue to lead in the way that is familiar for most of us in this room, that our recommitment to that education is going to be crucial. I'm talking to young people. I'm speaking to Korn College on Thursday, and the one thing I really look forward to is what their ideas are about the future. My concern, though, is how many others are really interested in what their ideas are, and they're fixed in the traditional ways to be at that business. My why in life is to find a better way. How I do that is by challenging the status quo and traditional thinking. I want to encourage that so that we could get those innovative ideas. And so we sit down at the table and we are either seeking it at a strategic level to support and defend our nation or to support another. We understand that technology is available and that we're not trapped in the same way we've been doing it, and we're sticking with that same old status quo. So I think that when it comes down to how do we continue to lead at the highest level, I agree with the rest of the panel members and our commitment to education and freedom and the encouragement of freedom of thought, so that we can bring the super genius folks back to the United States and have them apply their knowledge to technology and to the betterment of our nation.
Thank you. I think we all know here that we consider the United States to be a global power and to be a leader in the world. If we want to be able to stay the course, what do you think this administration should be doing?
So,
Or in general, what we should be doing. Please ask me.
They might not listen to us.
You try.
well, I think we should continue to talk about the principles, as you were saying, the principles of our nation is founded on. And, as a Christian, I've always said, even when I was ambassador, that I was leading with love, not hate. And right now, we're leading with hate and fear and bullying. And I think we need to keep pushing back against it. I think we need to be very vocal about it in an appropriate way. But most of all, I think we need to keep pushing our elected officials who do believe, pushing back against these things that aren't the principles who we are as a democracy. One, we need to get to the polls and elect the ones that do believe in those principles. Two, I think we need to push for budgets that support internationally the things that are important to defend democracy and to promote democracy. And on a personal, basis, to fire people in the military for who they are, I think is just so unfortunate of who we are as a nation. And to attack anyone who does not look like someone else. We have to continue to push those values and say this is, we're a country that is a melting pot of everyone, and that's what we're going to defend.
I'm going to return to this point about listening. There is tremendous expertise in this country of ours. In many different places, in the uniformed military, in our universities, in our institutions, there is expertise, and we should be able to invite that expertise in and listen to it respectfully, and then chart out a course of action. Nobody's got all the answers in DC. The answers, such as they are, probably are out there somewhere in these institutions and these organizations. But who does do is that you go to feel listen to it. So that's what I would suggest for the future, because it's going to be a very different world than the one that I grew up in, and we need all of the insight and expertise that we can.
I think the big thing that makes America great, why we're a global power, is the inherent goodness of people, and the things that you would do as a good neighbor, the things that you do as neighbors for each other, things that we do for other countries that aren't as fortunate as us. We're cutting humanitarian aid, disaster response. We've cut USAID, which is going to be devastated for countries that don't have the wherewithal to respond to so many national disasters. That is just a wrong way to be a leader. We're cutting all the good things that America is known for, and I think we got to get that back. That is sort of the basis for our global power. Yeah, we're sure we're the strongest military in the world. Sure, we have a lot of best economy, at least for now. But I think we have to get back to the basics of being a good people and being a good nation and supporting those that are in need and acting as a global leader in that respect.
Sometimes I feel overwhelmed and I get cranky. And I feel almost cynical at times. I don't sleep. And the tingle sign finally. It was in my ear that said, "Come on, I'll get." And I get so cranky that cynicism's around the door, and that's the wrong answer. This last week, I had an opportunity to write a letter of recommendation for a student desiring admission to the United States Air Force Academy. Should I do this, was the question. Absolutely. I encourage her, do it. And when other people want to withdraw or be cynical, do it. She has all the ingredients of great officership. As an older guy, it's my opportunity now not to withdraw and be cranky, but to encourage and draw on the heritage of my father's Navy experience, my brothers who were active duty service members, combat veterans, all, and say this country is worth it. Do it. I think one thing that we can all do is
continue when you see service members to say, yeah, thank you for your service. There have been occasions where I was in a place for no name, going through some of the most challenging things I'd ever seen, smelled, or experienced, living with my finger in the belt of the gunny sergeant, hoping that the ultimate doesn't have to happen to us. And what I realized is that when you have that exchange, that thank you reminds me that I don't have to stay in that sunken place. I don't have to stay in that dark place of survivor's remorse. I don't have to stay in that dark place of the why me. I realize when someone says thank you for your service, that is a way of that person treating me with dignity and respect because of the time that I served in uniform. Even without knowing who I am, regardless of what my beliefs are and how I look, they know that I committed myself to this nation and they're appreciative. And that measure of dignity and respect, and answer to your question, Madam Moderator, is that if our way of life became to treat each other with dignity and respect, starting even with the 47th administration, if we began to treat other countries with the dignity and respect that they deserve and we have seen in the past from the head of our nation, that will allow us to continue making the reputation of these United States that we have enjoyed in our lifetime. And my hope and belief is that if they're not willing to do it, when they see it, they be inspired to change.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. So actually, we want to see if there's any audience question, 1 or 2 questions in the audience, no pressure.
Ja, het is altijd somebody here for you. And the then you figure I can get in my US dollars, the TV cost open. I get to order the detail. Thank you very much. I appreciate your debut. Wait, that will so get back. Don't get back. If I continue to the carpets that say the door by the other side, because we just passed one day does it by cheese, that's all I get from it. And I'm about the section, I'm about the section that, hey, but do you remember old San John? Yeah. When I went out there at the spot, and I gave by, kicked the apologies hours, that I'll be paid for a shit spiders. So I did that. You know, as a sure, we could get plus. We got to get a lot. It's a great idea to shop it back to 4. And okay. Ratchet thought that I could get in something separate proofs. I could get him to do it, he won't respond. And I want to like propose, I rip the X by drop. Okay. Now, with that said, what can we do? I wrote about accountable meetings not happening. It's the only way we have in our emperor dinner that is shows that to talk to us is the time of only. How would you suggest that those goings to connect that a real urgent about it, not just for the pregnant, but for those of the real woman you're also.
I'll take a lesson from those who flood the zone. They flood the zone with misinformation. I'm going to flood the zone with charity. I can't reach everybody, but I can reach some. A commercial, I have a little congregation I serve in retirement. And I can't reach everybody, but each one of those people can reach someone. It can be, religion was mentioned, a witness of faith doesn't come just from the leader, it comes from every individual. So also is our witness to the goodness of America, to the goodness of American people. I can't reach everybody, but I can reach some. And I have sons, I have grandchildren, and I have people with whom I have friendships. I'm not going to rant anymore, but I am going to flood the zone as much as I can with charity, with optimism and hope, and get over my dang self and move forward with a witness of faith and confidence in the future of this nation because of the colleagues of the people I see here and the goodness that you see in the American people. Flood the zone, man.
one way if I can offer, when anyone in the Army knows that Rangers lead the way, all the way. And the thing is that another thing that we're reminded of often is that we should grow where we plant it, and be connected to a group like Principles First, being connected to a group in your particular community. Though you may not be able to get direct connection to those who represent us in Washington, D.C., or perhaps even in Austin, what you can do is attach yourself to a group with a strong foundation, high levels of integrity, and we're stronger together. And so when you link arms with somebody who is a known good, and with the group that is known good, and now we're in the room full of those folks, then it should be much easier to get that message out and to flood the zone.
I would say take to the internet. I mean, we have to call people out, and I'm not saying in an abusive way. Don't be a bully, and I know I can tell by your personality you're not. But go on the internet and talk about the issues that you're concerned about, that you want to speak to Senator Cruz about. And say, Senator Cruz's staff doesn't call me back, I can't get a telephone call from him, and hashtag Senator Cruz on every one of them, and make sure that you're hashtagging the DSCC and everybody else, so the people know he's not doing his job.
And before I take an audience question, I'll just say there are multiple members of the media here as well. So I don't know, it's a good thing to flag for media sometimes too, just as an FYI. Okay, I'm gonna take, yes ma'am, your audience question.
Great, shoot. Well, thank you all for being here and thank you for your service. Honestly, my question is related to the expansionism that we're seeing from this industry. I think top of Ukraine, talk about time and time. And it feels a little bit to me, and I'm not an conspiracy theorist at all, but it feels a little bit to me like there are excuses made for Russia, Ukraine, there are excuses made for China with Taiwan, because this administration is using language we've never heard in my lifetime. And previously, with regard to Canada, regards agreement, regard to Canada housing, it was a little bit more complex than agreement in Canada. But still, if you were invited into tomorrow to advise this administration on what they should do with regard to Greenland and Canada and the way they should communicate to those nations, what would this say?
I hate Susan Halloween. Well, first of all, when you're part of the administration, but I think it's an incredible question. It's very difficult because obviously these are allies, and Denmark has been a nation that every time we've gone into Afghanistan or any conflict in the world, they are the first to go in and ask them. And Ezra Gifford, who was the U.S. ambassador there, is a friend, he said they're there, and they've always been there for us. And now we're saying, we want to take your land. So I'm not sure that there's an answer to say what I would do if I was in the White House. What I would say, though, is to the people of Greenland, this is someone who happens to be an elected official, but there are many other elected officials in the U.S. that do not believe in this policy. We don't believe that we go in and take land to other people. We don't buy land from other people. These are sovereign nations that have their own independence and their own pride, and we find it offensive. So I'm sorry I can't answer the question that I'm not sure that there's anything to say to them other than we do not agree as Americans.
I'd like to add something. The Atlantic magazine's been in the news, obviously. John heard the Goldberg revelation yesterday of these texts, but I would recommend that he read something called One Word Describes Trump in the Atlantic by Jonathan Ralph. If you haven't read that, read that. It talks about patrimonialism and describes it. It's his governance, the way he approaches the world in governance and in the house. I can't go into it now, obviously, but there's two things, incompetence and corruption, that are endemic in this patrimonialistic style of government. And there's going to be wacky things like that come out. So I would start by reading.
Well, that wraps up this panel. Thank you so much for being here for all of you.